So good evening, welcome back. This evening, as we continue our discussion on reincarnation, we're going to enter into precarious territory, the difficult topic of suffering, and how the idea of reincarnation can help us grapple with this impossible question of why innocent, good people suffer. This is the ultimate question, a question that one wise man said that if you believe in God, you need to explain the existence of suffering. If you don't believe in God, you have to explain the existence of everything else. Meaning that, with the belief in God, we understand where the world came from. God created the universe. The question we have is, how could there be suffering in the world? What, the innocent people who suffer and die? What's the meaning of it? How can a good God allow such a thing? So when you believe in God, you have that question. If you don't believe in God, the question is, how did anything exist? How does the universe, how does anything come to be? Uh, and really, the question of suffering is not a question if you don't believe in God. Innocent people suffering, why shouldn't they? If the world is just a random place, if it's just an accident, it's just, some blip of random chance, why shouldn't innocent people suffer in such a world? If there's no rhyme or reason, there's no purpose, there's no divine being directing it, things happen. It's a jungle. So there's really no question why suffering happens and why innocent people suffer if you don't believe in God. But if you do believe in God, who is a loving creator who brought us with a purpose into this world, so then how do we fathom the idea that innocent people suffer? It's a problem of faith. Which, by the way, the fact that everyone does have this question, and there's not a living being, not a human being in the world who is not bothered by the question of the suffering of innocence, at least not a healthy human being, what does that show? That, that we do believe. We we do believe there should be rhyme and reason. There should be justice in this world. Like a young child already, very early on, starts saying it's not fair. Meaning it should be fair, and it's not. We expect fairness. Something innately deep down, we expect there to be a fair world. And when things aren't fair, it bothers us. And one of the greatest unfairnesses of the universe is when you see somebody who has no reason to be suffering, and they're suffering and in pain. The flip side of the question is, of course, why you see wicked people sometimes prosper. The people who seem evil and depraved and immoral get away with it, get away with murder, literally, and sometimes seem to live a comfortable, happy, long life, trouble-free. How do they get away with that? So this is the ultimate question that all the great thinkers from Moses before and after and onwards, every great thinker has asked this question. And there are many, many different answers that are offered, uh, and many different perspectives. And we can get into, well, what is the definition of a good and innocent person? What is the definition of suffering? Is suffering always bad? Is everyone who you think is good always good? The person you think is wicked, are they actually wicked? And you can go into those type of semantics and details and try to wiggle out of the question. But even after all those attempted answers, even if we say, well, the person's not completely righteous, they're not totally innocent. Or if you say, well, suffering does have a positive thing to it, and there's a good result that can come from suffering. That is true, and that will answer maybe some of the questions some of the time. But it won't really get to the core of it, because when a child is murdered, well, they're innocent. They're completely innocent, and there's no happy ending in this world for that child. And so you can't justify it with these type of theories. And so, what indeed is our approach? How do we approach this? Do we just relegate it to a mystery that we can't answer? Which is okay. It's okay. We can't answer every question. Do we leave it there, or do we attempt to grapple with it? So we find that the Jewish thinkers have attempted to grapple with it, always ending up with faith, but getting a little bit of more insight each time, a little bit of an understanding of this great mystery of what goes on in this world. In the Talmud, the collection of Jewish wisdom that was committed to writing in between the second and the seventh century of the Common Era, it's the oral tradition. So it's the tradition that was given at Mount Sinai, along with the Torah. There's the written Torah, which is the Torah, the scroll that we have in Shul, and then there's the oral tradition, the oral explanations of the Torah that was given along with it by God to Moses and handed down orally, but eventually committed into writing, expanded into conversations and debates of the great rabbis, and that's called the Talmud. And in the Talmud, it records a conversation between Moses and God, based on verses in the Torah where we see Moses asking questions of God, that he wanted to fathom God's ways. He asked God, show me your ways. I want to know your ways. The Talmud explains what that question was this question. That Moses, as he's conversing with God, he's got God's attention, as it were, and God is revealing to him the Torah. So he takes the opportunity to say, well, I want to understand the biggest mystery, and that is righteous people suffering and wicked people prospering. This is the ultimate question. If you, God, are a fair God and you expect goodness from the world and you are orchestrating the ways of the world, so surely we should see justice. The righteous should prosper and the wicked should suffer, not the other way around. And yet we see sometimes it is the other way around. Moses asked God why. So this is the best address that you could ask. If you're going to ask this question, asking God himself. You or I don't have the opportunity perhaps to converse with God, or at least it seems like a one-way conversation, or we don't hear God's responses, but Moses did. Moses was on the level where he heard God's responses. We can talk to God too. We just don't hear him talking back directly. Moses did. So Moses asked this question and he got an answer. This should be exciting. In the first section of Talmud, it's Tractate Brachot, the first volume of the Talmud, page 7a. That's exactly where it is, where it says that Moses asked God, why do righteous people suffer? Why do innocent people seem to prosper? And the answer of God is recorded here. We should be excited to hear this. What does God say? Spoiler alert, it's going to be a little bit disappointing when we hear the answer at first. But remember that whenever we're studying anything in Torah, anything in the Talmud and anything in the Kabbalah, any part of the Torah, if something doesn't sound satisfying, it means you need to go deeper. So let's hear. God answers Moses. When you see a righteous person who prospers, that is a righteous person who is the child of a righteous person. When you see a righteous person suffering, that's a righteous person who's the child of a wicked person. When you see a wicked person prosper, that's a wicked person who's the child of a righteous person. And when you see a wicked person suffering, that's a wicked person, the child of a wicked person. So this is a very problematic answer. An innocent person suffers, okay, it's because the parents were evil. A wicked person who's successful is going, well, oh, because they had good parents, they were the righteous. How does that answer the question? That just opens up a new question. Because that's also not fair. And indeed, the Torah itself says that children will not suffer for the sins of their parents. The Torah says that. Children don't suffer for the sins of the parents. Each person will bear their own sin. You've done wrong, you're responsible for it. Your parents did wrong. It's not your problem. You didn't cause that. It's not you. So to say that the righteous suffer because of the sins of their parents, the Talmud immediately asks that question. It says, but children don't suffer for their parents' sins. So the Talmud says, well, there's another verse that says that God visits the sins of the parents on the children. The Torah itself seems to contradict itself, that the children receive punishment from the sins of the parents. So the Talmud says, okay, so the contradiction now is within the Torah itself. We've got one verse that says, children do not suffer for their parents' sins. Another verse says, God visits the sins of the parents on the children. So the Talmud answers that question and says, well, that contradiction is if the children continue the ways of the parents, then they get punished, not only for their own sin, but for the sin of the parents that they are continuing. But if the children don't continue the way of the parents, so then they're not going to be punished for the parents' sins. So one verse says you won't be punished for your parents' sins. That's because you're not continuing their ways. The other one says that you will be punished for their sins. That's if you continue their ways, it compounds, and you're punished for your sin and for their sin. And then it goes on to talk about something else. Here we have the ultimate question of the universe and the greatest source you can possibly get, Moses asking God himself for the answer. And the answer seems less than satisfying from the creator of the universe. That you suffer if your parents were bad, you're good, but your parents are bad, so you suffer.
Everybody suffered, good, bad, indifferent.
Correct. And that's the ultimate question that you can always bring up the Holocaust. And any explanation or anything you say is going to fall apart when you ask that question. But the Holocaust really is not unique only in its magnitude. It's unique. The suffering of the Holocaust is the same as the suffering of any innocent person. Just it's multiplied so many times. It's so broad, so much bigger than any other imaginable suffering. But when one innocent child suffers, the same question applies. So we can't leave it there. We can't leave it with a simple level. And we never can. And anytime you're bothered by something in Torah, it's an invitation to delve, go deeper. What's actually going on here? And so it's with the Kabbalistic angle that we can get a little bit of an insight into what this is talking about. The the Arizal, the great Kabbalist the Arizal, as well as other Kabbalists, explain this Talmudic passage when it says that a righteous person who suffers is a righteous person who's the son of a wicked person. It's not talking about their parents. It's talking about their previous life. A child of here doesn't mean a literal child born from these parents. It means the extension, the soul that is born from a previous soul. And so what God is revealing to Moses in this discussion is that when we see a person suffering and they're innocent, it may be true. They may be innocent. It could be that this suffering is actually something that is not on their account. It's on the account of a previous life that they need to fix something. We're looking at it as unfair because from our plane, it does look unfair in the plane of this lifetime. But if we would see the prehistory, if we would know where that soul came from, so then we may understand that this suffering is actually, first of all, not necessarily undeserved, or even deeper, maybe this suffering is not really suffering. If we'd understand what the previous life experience was, so then we would see how this suffering is necessary for a correction of this soul and is actually not a bad thing. As impossible as that may be to understand as we observe it, but if we see the bigger picture, we would appreciate that. And so the Kabbalists say this is what God was telling Moses, that the suffering of the righteous in this world is because of something from a previous lifetime. The success of a wicked person in this world could also be because of something in a previous lifetime that is being fixed. Remember what we said, that reincarnation is not a punishment in the sense of retribution. Reincarnation is a chesed, is a kindness to fix the soul. And this experience that the soul is having in this lifetime, as unpleasant or horrific as it may look, it is a fixing of the soul that if you would see the full story, you would understand why this was the correct thing to happen. Now, again, I'm gonna another word of warning that that doesn't mean we have now explained all suffering. This cannot be a blanket statement that explains all suffering and makes everything make sense. It can't be. And as we'll see, but sometimes some suffering could certainly be explained in this way and give it a little bit of explanation and understanding. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, he was known as like a soul doctor. He saw a soul's journey. He knew every soul, where it came from, where it was going. He would direct people and give them advice in life to direct them to find where their correction was needed and what they need to do to find the completion of their soul. And he had an amazing insight. One of his students, his leading student, the Maggid of Mezrich, Rabbi Dov Ber of Mezrich, he once came to the Baal Shem Tov and said, "Teach me the Sod HaGilgul, the secret of reincarnation. Teach me how it works. I want to understand this secret of reincarnation and how it works." So the Baal Shem Tov said, "I'll teach you with your own eyes." He told him to go to a certain crossroads near a river, like a little pathway near a river. Sit down on a log, watch what's going on for the day, but don't open your mouth. Don't say anything, just watch what happens. So Rabbi Dover obeyed and he went down to the river, he found the spot, sat down by the river, and he saw that as he sat there, it was just a quiet day by the river. After a while, an hour or two passed, and a very fancy carriage comes riding by. We're talking about 300 years ago. So a fancy carriage, was a horse-drawn carriage. Obviously, some nobleman was coming by, and he went and stopped by the river. It was a beautiful, nice, fresh river, and his servant went and got him a drink, and he sat down by the river and had a drink and a rest by the side of the road. And after a while, he got back into his carriage. And Rabbi Dovber noticed that as he got back into his carriage, a big wallet fell out of his pocket and ended up next to the riverbed there. Dovber's impulse was to get up and tell him, "You dropped your wallet," but he was under strict instructions. The Baal Shem Tov told him, "Watch, don't say anything. You just observe." So he sat back, didn't interfere, and the carriage drove off. Sometime later, as the Rabbi Dover is waiting and sitting and watching and seeing what's going to happen next, sometime later, another carriage stops by. Uh, Average one, nothing special. And another guy comes out and he goes by the river to get a drink, and he bends over and he has a drink. And as he's down there, he says, "Oh, what's this?" And he picks and he sees a wallet. And he looks in and it's full of money. So he looks this way, he looks that way. No one's around. So he pockets it. Again, Rabbi Dovber was tempted to say, "Oh, that belongs to somebody," but he was told by the Baal Shem Tov, "You're not interfering, you're observing." So he watched, and the guy pocketed and left. The day was almost over when a guy he sees a guy wandering along the river, and uh, again stops at the same spot to get a little drink, sits down by the river to relax for a minute, and all of a sudden, the fancy carriage of the nobleman comes back, stops by the side of the river, and the nobleman comes out and said, "Hey, did you see my wallet?" And the guy innocently says, "No, I didn't see a wallet here." He said, "Yes, you did. You stole my wallet." He said, I didn't. I just got here. I'm having a drink. There's no wallet here." He said, "You did." And the nobleman starts beating him with a stick, beating him, beating. The guy's saying, "I don't know what you're talking about." He says, "You have my wallet." And he beats him violently until he's almost unconscious. And after doing that, he leaves him for dead and drives off. Don Vera is watching all this. I mean, he wanted to intervene, but the Baal Shem Tov told him not to. So he couldn't do anything. He just saw this whole thing happen. Anyway, the sun is about to set. He feels like he's had his day. He goes back to the Baal Shem Tov and says, what was going on here? So Baal Shem Tov said, well, what did you see? He told him. Some wealthy guy lost his wallet. Some other guy came and found it and pocketed it. A third guy comes and innocently is sitting there, and the rich guy comes back and beats him up. So Baal Shem Tov says, was that fair? No, it's not fair. He's innocent. The innocent guy got beaten up. The other guy who is not so innocent, he picked up somebody else's wallet and he pocketed it. He went off with a lot of money. And the poor rich man who's now lost his money, well, he wasn't all that nice. He beat up the wrong guy, but he lost his money. I mean, it's not fair. Baal Shem Tov said, these three all met in a previous life. The first two, the wealthy man and the other guy who found the wallet, so they had a monetary dispute between them, where the wealthy man had ripped off his fellow, taken a lot of money, lied about it, and he was taken to court. And what the wealthy guy did is that he bribed the judge to find him innocent of all charges. And by doing so, the judge took some cash, said he's fine. He got away with the money. The poor guy who he'd ripped off was destitute and left with nothing. And the judge had pocketed some nice money and went off. This had to be fixed. So the wealthy man who was in the first lifetime, he was the one who had ripped off the second guy who'd found the wallet. So he got his money back. He lost his money and he got his money back. It was deserving. And the third guy who was innocently sitting there by the river and got beaten up, that was the judge. He was the judge who got his comeuppance for taking a bribe and being a corrupt judge. Now, with that background, when you look at the story, you look at it differently. Like, what can you say? The person who you felt sorry for, who was completely innocent, just sitting there and getting beaten up, well, that was his comeuppance. That was his soul's correction. He had to go through that. The guy who lost the money, well, he'd taken money. The guy who found the money, well, he lost it last time. It's all the same soul. Does that explain suffering? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Because the guy got beaten up. He wasn't the judge. It's his soul that came back. But his soul came back to correct a very terrible sin. And so the very person who previously had given him a bribe, this time gave him a beating. If we would ask this guy, are you happy with getting beaten up here on the side of the road? He said, no, it's not fair. I did nothing, and he's right. But if we'd ask his soul, is this beating what you want? Yeah, I needed this. I needed this beating. I needed to go through this as a correction for what my previous life was. His soul knows that. He doesn't know it consciously. When this guy lost the fortune, he's furious. But his soul knows that he has to give it back. And the guy found the money. Well, it was coming back. What he lost, he got it back. Now, still, would the soul be happy with getting a beating or losing its money? Well, the answer is yes, because when we have a blemish on our soul, when we have caused evil or negative or damage in this world, if we leave this world without fixing it, if there's somebody who we hurt and we didn't make amends, if there's somebody that we took their property and we didn't give it back, if we were corrupt and caused an injustice to happen and we didn't fix it in our lifetime, so then there's only one of two options. Either we're going to have our soul cleansed in the next world, or we're going to have to come back in this world and fix it up. An evil deed, an immoral deed has to be cleansed because our soul is pure. But the evil we do is a layer of muck, of gunk, of dirt over our soul. Ultimately, our soul goes to the next world to enjoy closeness with God. But if there's something blocking that, if there's something covering the soul, we can't enjoy it. We can't go to the next world. That gunk has to be removed. And it's either removed in this world or in the next world. Which would we rather? Would we rather our soul cleansed in this world or in the next world? Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I'm comparing. I don't know what happens in the next world. Well, I don't know, but I do know because it's been revealed to us by our sages that there's a very big difference between the cleansing in the next world and this world. We cannot imagine what next world is because it's a world of souls without bodies. It's a spiritual existence without any physical existence. What does that mean? What does it feel like to be a soul without a body? We don't know. We don't have any memory of that. We were that before we were born. We don't know what it's like. We can't remember. So what is the suffering of a soul without a body? We don't know. But what we do know from our sages and our mystics and the wise men have told us, a small amount of suffering in this world is worth a huge amount of suffering in the next world. A little pain down here is worth a lot up there. In the book of Tanya, it gives a metaphor of when we're down here in this world and we see that the sun has moved. In the afternoon, the sun was here and now the sun has gone down. It just moved a few centimeters, right? Like it was there and now it's gone a few centimeters down. In this world, it's a few centimeters. But for the sun, the relative movement of the sun, it's thousands of kilometers. The sun, as it moves along, it just looks like, look, from us, it looks like a few centimeters from down here, but up there, it's huge movement. So too, down here, a small amount of suffering is a huge amount of suffering in the next world. It's worth way more. This world is the world of movement, where any experience here is magnified and is more powerful. Up there, we're up there for infinity, for eternity. Down here, we're here for a very short amount of time. And we cram into that amount of time small acts of good that have a huge impact. If we do evil, it also has a huge impact. But if we have an experience of negativity, of suffering, of pain, that has a huge cleansing impact on us. So the Talmud, for example, says, anytime we have an experience of pain, we should say it should be a cleansing. In Sephardi communities, they say the word kapara. Like from Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur means the day of cleansing, the day of atonement. Kapara means a cleansing. So many Sephardi families have a custom that when something bad happens, they say kapara. It's a cleansing. The Talmud says when you're walking along the street and you stub your toe, you hurt your toe. Kapara. It's a cleansing. When you put your hand in your pocket and you want to take out a $1 coin, but you take out a 10-cent coin. Kapara. That's not a big deal. It's not such a huge inconvenience when you took out the wrong coin out of your pocket. But the Talmud uses as an example, a small inconvenience in this world, a little annoyance, kapara. It's a cleansing. It cleansed my soul. And it will cleanse me in this world way more than I will in the next world. The next world, it could be huge amount of painful cleansing that will go on in the next world. A small little inconvenience in this world did it. That was enough. And so I should embrace that because it's a kapara, it's a cleansing. None of us are purely innocent of sin. We've all done things wrong. So something goes wrong, you get a parking ticket, kapara. You catch a cold, stomachache, kapara. And bigger things as well. Bigger suffering sometimes is just a very bigger cleansing. So going through stuff in this world is worth way more than the next world. It's a good exchange rate. So if the soul of that guy getting beaten up, if he was asked, that soul knows I have some big stuff to fix from a last life. Taking a bribe as a judge and doing an incorrect judgment, a dishonest judgment, like that's really bad. That's really bad stuff. So if this beating I took, that's my cleansing, kapara, thank God. That that's exactly what I needed. It is difficult to say this to somebody else who's suffering, but it's helpful to say it to yourself when you're suffering. Any explanation for suffering, when you offer it to someone else, is insensitive, is condescending, is missing the point. We're not here to explain somebody else's suffering. We're here to alleviate somebody else's suffering, to help them, to support them, to empathize with them. But for ourselves, to train ourselves that when we go through suffering, big or small, to see it as a cleansing is helpful. And maybe it's not this lifetime that I'm fixing. Maybe it's my previous lifetime. Maybe I am innocent in this lifetime, but there's something from before that I need to fix. And that's actually why my soul came into this world. If that's the case, so then I can embrace the suffering, not to enjoy it, not to seek it, but to accept it, to believe that there is a high purpose in it. And that's also important. We don't seek suffering. Self-inflicted suffering, that's not what we're talking about here. Don't go and bump your toenail to hurt yourself. No, then you brought that upon yourself. That's not how it's supposed to be. It's talking about the inevitable suffering that every person goes through. This is for whatever reason meant to be. And if I need to go through this, this is my cleansing. So that's how the Baal Shem Tov taught the Maggid of Mezrich, his student, the secret of Gilgul, the secret of reincarnation. You can see it with your own eyes. If you don't know the backstory, it's just a crazy set of accidents. He accidentally dropped his wallet. This guy accidentally found the wallet. The third guy happened to be there at the wrong time, the wrong place, and got beaten up. Each one of them could complain about the randomness of what happened. That's how the world looks on the surface. But when you see the inner story that the Baal Shem Tov was able to reveal, then you can understand what's happening. This this idea is found in the Tanakh as well, in the Torah and in the Hebrew Bible, in the stories of the Tanakh. There's a tale of Job, the book of Job, which is a very painful book. It's a book about an innocent, righteous man who suffers terribly. And it's a long study of the suffering of innocent people. And in it, Job has discussions with friends of his who each try to explain why he's suffering and why this is happening. And it all falls on deaf ears because no explanation is acceptable. The Kabbalists say that this is also a reincarnation story. Any explanation you say will not be sufficient because we don't see the full story. Job was suffering because he was fixing his soul from previous times. One of the early commentaries, Rabbi Nachmanides, Moshe ben Nachman, he was in Spain in the 1100s. So he writes in his commentary on the book of Job that the secret of Ibur, he calls it, of pregnancy of a soul, of the reincarnation of a soul, is the only way to understand this suffering. There's no other way to make sense of it. The Baal Shem Tov had many stories where he identified reincarnated souls, and in many cases he explained different situations that on the surface looked only painful and only unfair, but by giving the reincarnation slant on it, it changed things. The Baal Shem Tov used to go on journeys, with his wagon, with his students. He would say, "Come with me." They'd go into the wagon, and he would often give the horses free rein. So the wagon driver was Ivan, I believe, a non-Jewish wagon driver. He would tell Ivan, "Let the horses just go where they want," because he knew he'd be led to where he needs to be. And so on one such journey, they journeyed out and they ended up in a village, and they found a little Jewish home, and they stopped the Baal Shem Tov and his students, and they said, "Can we come and stay here?" And the little villager, it was him and his wife. He saw the Baal Shem Tov with his students. "Sure, you want to come here? What an honor! Please come in." So uh, the villager said, "I want to make a feast in your honor. I want to honor to have such a holy man staying in my home with his students. I would like to make a feast for you. What can I feed you? What can I give you that will honor you the most?" Moshe Shem Tov said, "Do you have some goose? Do you have a goose? I love goose. Goose? Yeah, I have a goose. Can I see?" So he looks and then out there, he's got some chickens, so got some geese. Moshe Shem Tov said, "How about that big white goose over there? Can we have that?" I said, "For sure, with pleasure. Why not?" So the the villager took his goose, and in those days, people knew how to slaughter, to shecht. Today we have a shochet, a slaughterer. In those days, a lot of people knew how to shecht themselves. They knew how to do it, including this villager. And so he went and he shechted the goose. But in the laws of shechting, there's the way to do it, but then sometimes a question arises as to the health of the goose. If you notice as you're shechting, sometimes in the throat or in the belly or something, there could be something that looks a bit not kosher. And in this goose, there was a bit of a question. The villager wasn't sure if it was a kosher goose. It may have had some type of disease. It could be the way it was shechted wasn't exactly right. He wasn't sure that it was kosher. And so he took the goose to the Baal Shem Tov and said, I slaughtered the goose you wanted, but looking at it, I'm not sure it's kosher. There's a bit of a question. But I thought, well, I've got a rabbi here, so can you just have a look at the goose and tell me if it's kosher? So the students of the Baal Shem Tov all came and started looking at the goose, and I started debating and discussing: is it kosher or is it not kosher? Because they were all rabbis, they were all students of the Talmud and of the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. Some were saying, "Yeah, I think it is kosher," because there's some said, "No, I don't think so. It's got a bit of a problem." And they were debating back and forth whether it was kosher. Baal Shem Tov was stood by. After a while, they said, "Okay, so it's time to ask the Baal Shem Tov. He's our master. Tell us, is this goose kosher or not?" Baal Shem Tov looked at the goose. He looked at the students, and he said, "Don't ask me. Ask him." And he pointed to the corner of the house of these villagers. There was a child curled up in the corner. The villagers felt a bit uncomfortable, but he said, I'm sorry, that's my son. He was born this way with severe disabilities. He can't even stand up. Since the day he was born, he never opened his mouth. He can't talk. We look after him, we feed him, we love him, but he was born in this way. He can't talk. So it was a bit strange that the Baal Shem Tov is suggesting to ask this child, who was already a teenager at this stage, to to decide whether this goose is kosher. Not only is he not a rabbi, he's not even able to speak. But even after that explanation, that the villager explained who this child was, the Baal Shem Tov said, "Ask him." So they took the goose over to the child and said, "Is the goose kosher or not kosher?" The child sort of woke up, stood up, said, "It's kosher." The villager and his wife couldn't believe it. Their child, this 16, 17-year-old boy, had never spoken, suddenly speaks, stands up. They could believe it. The child lies down. The students go like, what just happened? And then the parents go to the child and they see that he's not moving. He lay down, went to sleep, and never woke up. He passed away. So there's just total confusion and commotion. The most biggest miracle just happened, and then the greatest tragedy. Like they don't know what happened. Baal Shem Tov said, "Prepare the goose for our meal, and all will be revealed at the meal." So they cook up a meal, and everyone knows something big has just happened. And so they're at the meal, and the Baal Shem Tov said, "I'd like to tell you a story. Many years ago, in a village not far from here, it was Friday afternoon, and there was a poor woman who had taken a chicken to be slaughtered for Shabbos, to cook for her family for Shabbos. And the ritual slaughterer, the shochet, had slaughtered it. And there was a question with the chicken, whether the chicken was kosher or not. And the slaughterer said, I can't answer this. You're going to have to take this to the rabbi to check if this chicken is kosher. It's too complicated for me. So the woman ran. It was Friday afternoon. It was getting late. She had to make her chicken and get ready for Shabbos. And she ran to the rabbi's house. She knocked on the door. The rabbi's wife answered. She said, I've got a question for the rabbi about this chicken, if it's kosher. So the wife went to the rabbi and told him, there's a question. He said, what? He says, there's the woman from the community. She needs to know if the chicken's kosher. The rabbi came, looked at the chicken, saw it was a complicated question, and thought, okay, I'm going to have to look up the laws of this one. It maybe it's kosher, maybe not. I'm not so sure. By the time I look that up, it's already Friday afternoon, and I need to get ready for Shabbos. She needs to get ready for Shabbos. I'm just going to, in his mind, I said, I'm just going to err on the side of caution and just say it's no good. He said, it's not kosher. I'm sorry. You'll have to throw it out. But here, take a chicken from our kitchen. I'll give you some chicken for Shabbos. So they threw out the chicken. They gave her chicken. She went home and everything was fine. Well, everything was fine, but not quite, because in the heavenly court, not long after this, it was decided that rabbi, his time had come, and he passed away. And he came up to the heavenly court, and his life was looked at, and he had a flawless record. He was a very righteous man, very good person. And like everybody, after we leave this world, we go in front of the court and they look through all of our deeds. His deeds were good, righteous. And it was about to be decided in the heavenly court that his soul does not have to go through any cleansing, no sins, nothing wrong. He can go straight to heaven. Most souls need to pass through some type of cleansing. His soul was so righteous, he was so good, he can go straight to heaven. That they were about to say that until there was an objection in the court, in the heavenly court. There was a voice from the back that said, I object. His soul is not flawless. And the court turned around, I'm imagining, and to see a chicken. There was a chicken in the back of the court saying, I object. He's not totally righteous. So they gave the chicken the floor, tell us what is your claim against the rabbi? And the chicken said, I was a kosher chicken. I was slaughtered by the shochet for a poor woman in this rabbi's village. It was Friday afternoon. The shochet wasn't sure if I was kosher, so I was taken to the rabbi. The rabbi should have looked into the law, studied it, and said that I'm kosher. That's what he should have done. And even if he wasn't 100% sure if I was kosher or not, he still should have said I was kosher, because in Jewish law, there's an idea that when there's a great loss to somebody, so you don't take it away. You don't take it away a chicken from the woman. Yes, he gave her another chicken. So on that side, he did the right thing. But I was a kosher chicken. I was supposed to be eaten by that beautiful family on Shabbos. And that would have been the elevation of my soul. Because after all, a chicken, what can a chicken do in this world other than be eaten at a Shabbos table to be elevated? What's the greatest ambition that a chicken can have?
Golden.
It sounds painful to me. Uh, we human beings, we can do a mitzvah, we can do good things, we can make the world better. We can make it worse as well. But a chicken can't make the world better or worse, can't do anything to improve the world unless the chicken is eaten as a part of a mitzvah. Then the chicken is doing a mitzvah as part of a mitzvah. If that chicken would have ended up at that poor family on the table, that would have been such a mitzvah. Because the effort that that family took to buy a chicken, the poor family back then to have a chicken, why did she have such effort? For the sake of Shabbos. Shabbos has to be special. Even though she couldn't really afford it, but she scrounged and saved and she managed to get a chicken for the Shabbos table. And eating that chicken, the poor family eating that chicken on Shabbos would have been such a mitzvah, would have created such holiness in the world. It would have been the elevation of my soul, says the chicken. This was my mission. This is where I needed to go. But that rabbi, because he was rushed on Friday afternoon, he just said, chuck it out. And I ended up in the bin and eaten by the dogs, and I was not elevated. So that rabbi is not so innocent. He's got my soul to answer to, says the chicken. So the heavenly court had to reckon with this. It's a point. It's a good point. This chicken wasn't elevated because of the rabbi. So they turned to the rabbi and said, "You got to fix this." And again, what the choice is to go to Gehenna, purgatory, a cleansing of your soul, or to go back down and fix it. Going to Gehenna is not so pleasant. Going back down, well, the court said the right thing for you to do is go back down into the world, and you need to fix this soul, this chicken soul. The rabbi said, "Are you serious? You're sending me back into the world? I spent 70, 80 years in that world, the world of challenge, the world of difficulty, the world of temptation. I could have gone any direction and I had many opportunities, but I held strong. And I was a righteous, good person for that entire time. And I managed to come to the end of my life. And on my deathbed, I knew that I had no qualms, no regrets. I'd made peace with anyone I needed to make peace with. I'd apologized to anyone I'd apologized. I paid back any debts. I had a complete clean slate coming out of this world. Doesn't mean he never did anything wrong, but he'd done tshuva, he'd repented, he'd fixed anything that was wrong. And I come up to heaven, and you're ready to put me into the Garden of Eden, into paradise. And because of one little slight infringement of inadvertently throwing this chicken away and not allowing it to reach its fulfillment, I gave the woman another chicken. I did everything right. It was Friday afternoon, it was Shabbos. Because of that little thing, you're going to send me back down into the world to live another life of challenge, to go through all of the temptations and all the difficulties of life as it is inherent in this physical world. Who knows? I might be worse off. I might come back with worse sins. You think I can pull it off again? To live such a flawless life with just one little slight, inadvertent, indirect sin? Is that fair to send me down and face the challenges of life again just to fix the chicken's soul? God said he's right. The chicken's right. I need to be fixed. The rabbi's right. It's not fair to send me down and be challenged all over again just for such a small thing. So the heavenly court is always just, is always fair. So it was decided that the rabbi has to go down and the chicken has to go back down. But the rabbi will go down in a form that cannot sin, that cannot become corrupt. That's the only fair way to do it. And so the chicken was sent down as a goose this time, and the rabbi was sent down in the form of that child, a child that was born with such severe deformities and handicaps that he couldn't speak, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't sin, couldn't do anything wrong, remained absolutely pure as a soul here in this world, but a completely pure soul who hurt nobody, who was a recipient of love and gave love back without any negativity or any wrongdoing whatsoever. A completely pure soul. And all that soul needed to do was to pronounce the goose kosher. And so the Baal Shem Tov, who sees these things, who understands these things, he went to that particular village, found this particular family, chose that particular goose, and orchestrated it that this child should give the answer. The words that the child was born to say, it's kosher. And then the soul was released. The soul of the chicken in the form of the goose was eaten by the students in a holy meal and was elevated. And the soul of the rabbi in the form of the child fulfilled its mission without blemishing its soul. And the soul was able to go to its worthy place in paradise. There's a lot to unpack in this story. We see what we spoke about previously about animal reincarnation and how an animal can't fix itself, but it can be fixed. And every animal, whether it's a reincarnated soul or not, needs to be elevated. And that's only through human effort, through us doing a mitzvah with the assistance of the animal, plant, and mineral worlds. That's how we elevate them. But also we see the fascinating prehistory of this child. No one is going to say that it's not difficult to see a child born with difficulties. And no one can dismiss the pain for parents, for a family going through that, and for the child themselves, possibly, we don't know always. But assumedly so. We can't make light of it, and we can't just say, oh, it's a great thing, so it's a wonderful thing. But what the Baal Shem Tov here was revealing to us is there's more to the story than just the external. There's a soul story going on here. If life is about achieving, having a career, developing our abilities, traveling around the world, improving our golf swing, if that's what life is about, so then we need just a healthy body, and that's all that really matters. But if life is about fulfilling a mission, about bringing a particular light into the world, a particular goodness into the world, so then the body is the vehicle for that, but that could be in many forms. The soul is the driver of fulfilling our mission. And so if somebody is born in a state or develops into a state during their lifetime where their body is not fully functioning, or like a case here where the body is not functioning at all, that doesn't take away at all the light of the soul. In fact, on the contrary, the rest of us who are able-bodied means we're able to sin and to corrupt ourselves and to do damage. But this child who was not able-bodied remained an absolute pure soul. And so why did that soul come into the world? Just to pronounce a goose kosher? Well, that was its ultimate mission. That's what the soul came into as for. But a soul like that, a soul that is amongst us here in this world, but maintaining the purity of heaven, such a soul is an incredible gift. The parents who were gifted with that soul were chosen. That it should be these parents who receive this soul, because they will safeguard and look after and love that soul, but also they will receive from that soul the gift of having in your presence a pure soul, an untouched, unblemished soul. If you think about it, it's people who are in that level of need that elicit out of humanity the most pure altruism. Parents looking after a child like that is out of pure selfless love. It's not for the nachas that they're going to get from this child. It's not because this child will look after them in their old age. It's not any satisfaction or pleasure or selfish gratification that they get from this child. Sometimes it's not even a response from the child that they get, that they can see. It is pure love. And only such a pure soul who came into the world and remain unblemished and untarnished from this world that can elicit and inspire and bring out from us such beauty, such goodness. I once saw a similar thing in Israel. I met a family. The name was the Tzachor family, who lived in Kiryat Arba, next to Hebron. And I spent a Shabbos in their home, and they had adopted a child like this. And so we were sitting at the Shabbos table, and literally, like the Baal Shem Tov story, in the corner on the floor was a child who couldn't communicate with words, couldn't stand up, couldn't feed themselves. And this family had adopted him. And I remember I was an 18-year-old yeshiva student at the time, being hosted by them for Shabbos. I remember just being in awe that there's a family who had their own children, and they adopted this child out of pure love and pure care. And I saw the way they looked after him and included him in the Shabbos table and in the songs and in whatever they were doing, with no readable response or that you can normally expect from a person, but just the pure love. Again, nobody's going to say that this is what we should all aspire and want and seek out, and nobody's going to say that a parent going through this has shouldn't complain and shouldn't, what a blessing. The words are true, but it's also extremely painful, extremely hard, very taxing and trying, and it takes superhuman strength. But what the Baal Shem Tov and what the Kabbalists are trying to bring to our attention and bring into our mindset and bring into our attitude is that there's a way bigger story going on. And what can be described as a tragedy, like the birth of such a child, it's sad. There's a tragedy, that a child who's so unwell, and the death of such a child at a young age. These are tragedies, yes. But with the big story, there is a light to the story. There's a beauty to that story. If we're just physical beings, it's only bad and it's only sad and it's only tragic. But if we're souls, then there's something more. Again, when we believe in God, when we believe in a bigger picture, so then every soul has a mission, and every soul has a story, and every soul has a purpose. Without that, it's just bad news. So, have we explained why bad things happen to good people? Why innocent people suffer? Have we got the answer? I don't think so. I think we've just got a little bit of an insight into what the bigger story is. That, like the Talmud says, when God answered Moses, this person's suffering, but look what was before. You don't see that story. You don't know what happened before. So when there was this corrupt judge who took a bribe, and in the next life he got beaten up. So there's a string of justice there. This child, well, this child is coming to fix something in an innocent way. It's a blessing for the soul that to live in such a form because it stays pure. When we have that bigger picture, so it humbles us to stop jumping to conclusions. We make a judgment based on the external world that we see, and we assume this is good news, this is bad news, this is suffering, and this is pleasure, this is unfair, and this is fair. We just don't know. There's a way bigger story going on, way more than we know. Ultimately, our sages all said that suffering cannot be understood by us in this world. Because any explanation we give, you can always come back to, well, why couldn't God do it in another way? God, in his all-powerful self, could have organized that this world is works out and people come to their perfection without suffering and pain. Any explanation we give, you can always ask that. God is all-powerful. So why do it have to be that way? Why isn't there another way for the soul of the rabbi to come back into the world and not sin? Only to live in that form and to die so young? Is that the only way? Is that the only possibility? Why is it that souls come into this world and leave this world early? And yes, their soul came to bring a certain gift and holiness to the world, but the parents are bereft when a child dies. Maybe for that soul, it was the perfect journey, but the pain that we have to go through, isn't there some other way? And any explanation we give, you can always come back to that. Couldn't God work out another way? And he could. And that's why, in the end, we can't explain suffering. And certainly, the example of the Holocaust, which is always brought, is there's no possible previous life that can warrant that suffering. The Rebbe once addressed this. The Rebbe himself was a Holocaust survivor and he lost family in the Holocaust. And whenever he heard people giving explanations, the people in the Holocaust died because of their sins or because of their previous life sins or any explanation, the Rebbe adamantly and vehemently opposed that and said, we have no explanation for the suffering of innocent people. We cannot understand it. On an individual level, on a personal level, can we think that there's maybe a bigger story? Yes, but the magnitude and the hugeness of that suffering, to say that it's explainable, is actually wrong. Because if we can explain it, we can live with it. And if we can live with it, then we can tolerate suffering and turn a blind eye to it. And that's not moral. We're better off not being able to explain it and opposing it and standing up for it and alleviating suffering, not explaining it and being comfortable with it. If I can justify why innocent people suffer, then innocent people can suffer and I can live on. I can sleep comfortably with innocent people suffering because I got an explanation. Meanwhile, I don't have an explanation, so I can't sleep tight and know that innocent people are suffering. I have to do whatever I can to stop innocent people suffering, including complaining to God. So, as I said at the beginning, we tread on very thin ice and cautious, precarious ground when we try to explain any suffering, because ultimately we don't have an explanation. But these stories, the Baal Shem Tov's revelations, what the Kabbalists tell us about these stories, what it gives us is just the sense that there is a bigger picture that we don't see. And in this lifetime, we may never see. Sometimes a little opening, a little hint, like these stories where the Baal Shem Tov revealed here and that and there. But ultimately, suffering is something we want to alleviate, not explain. Comments, questions?
The suffering that we go through as Jews, and then there's been many periods, is almost like a collective suffering of us as people.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
we have to.
Yeah. So Abraham, the first Jew, It says again in the Talmud this story that Abraham was told by God that you are the father of the chosen people, which means it's your job to fix the evil and the negativity in the world. That's your job. You're here to bring goodness into the world, which means to fight against evil. But fighting against evil means you're going to have to go through tough times. To fight against evil means you have to face evil, and facing evil means suffering as well. And so he was given a choice. Should that suffering be in the afterlife and you have an easy time down here, or down here in this world to go through trials and tribulations, but that will ease your time in the afterlife? That was Abraham's choice. God gave Abraham the choice. And he chose the second. He chose suffering in this world. It should be tough in this world, but that will pave the way for the next world. Because the next world is eternal. This world is temporary. But that meant that Abraham took upon him and his children, which is that's who we are, the difficult path of going through the persecutions, the exiles, and all the challenges of this world. That's why they say being the chosen people, it's not such an easy job. Like like the Yidu once said, God, maybe next time choose somebody else. Like it's not easy. But yeah, definitely the Jewish people, what we've seen, because we're at the coal face, we're head on battling evil. That's our mission, to bring good into the world and battling evil. Evil doesn't take it sitting down, so it resists.
But what about the people who lost their faith after the Holocaust? They just abandoned the Jewishness.
Yep, yep. So the Rebbe spoke about that well as well. The Rebbe said it's completely understandable. It's completely understandable for somebody who goes through suffering on that level to lose their faith. But he also pointed out that often it wasn't that they lost their faith, it was that they were angry at God, which is very different. Losing faith means there's no God, there's nothing. Angry at God is a sense of indignation, of injustice. You can only be angry at someone who's there, who you know is there, and you're upset and you're pained by it. And that is a form of faith as well. And so many people who went through, some people it strengthened the faith, many people it weakened their faith, but it's still there. Eli Wiesel was an example. He had many discussions with the Rebbe after his experiences in Auschwitz, and he was angry at God. But he came to realize how that is a form of faith and a form of protest. And there's room for that as well. In the world of faith, there's room for being angry at God and protesting. There's a story, one of the Baal Shem Tov students, Rabbi Michael of Zlotchev, is his name. After he passed away, he had a son who was also a very holy man, who used to have out-of-body soul experiences where he would visit his father in heaven. His father, after he passed away, he would converse with him. Usually in a dream state, he would go into the heavens and he would talk. One day, he went to his father's abode in the heavens and wasn't let in. He was refused access. And he didn't know why. He always was able to connect with his father, and now he couldn't. So he's banging on the door or whatever, and his father comes out and says, "You can't come in today." Why not? So his father says, "What did you do today?" So he said, "Well, somebody came to me for a blessing. They were going through very difficult times and hard times in their life. And they came to me for some help and for a blessing. And I quoted them the verse that King Solomon says that who God loves, he chastises. Whoever God loves, he chastises. He afflicts. Whoever God loves, he chastises. He tells them off. Meaning that the person that God loves, he gives him pain and suffering to cleanse him, to lift him to a higher place. So the fact that you're going through pain shows that God loves you, not hates you, loves you. You're not being punished. You're being invited higher because pain makes a person deeper. It lifts your soul to a higher place. The person who God loves, he chastises. And so the father said, that's why you're not allowed in. When somebody comes to you in pain, you don't quote them that verse. You have to rearrange that verse. And you should say, The one, if you love somebody, then you chastise God. If you rearrange the punctuation of that verse, instead of the one who God loves, he chastises, it's if you love somebody, chastise God when you see them suffering. When you see a person suffering, say, God, it's not fair. Take away their pain. That's your job. Not to accept somebody else's pain, but to protest it.
To tell him to suck it up.
Correct. Correct. You empathize with him, do what you can to alleviate his pain, and then turn to God and say, God, help this guy. It's not right. God will do what he sees fit. We don't know the big story. We don't know if this pain, maybe this is the good for his correction. That's possible. That's God's business. God arranges the person to get their correction. Our business is to help people, is to alleviate pain and suffering, to protest it, to say it's not fair. It shouldn't be. We can't mix up. Don't do God's job. He does that. We have to be the human who says, in my eyes, this is unfair. And therefore, I protest. When I'm suffering, I can also do that and say, please God. But all of these lessons the Kabbalists are teaching us is to understand that maybe there's another side to it. And maybe after you've asked God to change and it didn't change, or you're going through it and it didn't help, there's a bigger tale, and this is your correction. So we have to be very careful when we use these ideas, but they can be helpful to us in explaining the challenges that we go through. May we not go through any challenges. May we only have blessing and good. Amen.